Well, we're back to Season 6 of Ray Donovan, yes. It's that time again that we talk about the world-renowned show that I somehow managed to find myself praising, despite the fact that I can't figure out the reason why. It must have been because I had Showtime for free for some strange reason. I decided to watch that alongside Dexter, but that's for another story. But yeah, we're going to be talking about Season 6 of Ray Donovan, and we begin with the season premiere known as Staten Island, Part 1. There's probably a Part 2, but I don't want to cheat myself and look in advance. But anyways, the episode opens up immediately after the events of last season's finale, in which it first focuses on an officer bringing a man over to his car, but as he puts him in, he sees Ray jumping out of the building into the river, which, while on his case, the officer decides to try and save him, but much like in the ad and trailer for it, Ray refuses to be saved, but he gets knocked out by him. We move on from that point, as Ray is basically set up in a holding cell alongside the other criminal that the officer winded up taking with him, and of course Ray is set loose as he winds up meeting with last season's character, Samantha. At least I think she was from the last season. I gotta rewatch them again sometime. Maybe when the complete series box set comes out, I don't know. But we continue onwards as he's meeting up with Samantha in the car, but of course, as soon as he gets out from the meeting, Ray has to come to a decision whether or not he should return to LA or stay in New York. Which, in the long run, since he has nowhere to go in LA, he decides to basically stay in New York. And after meeting up with the officer that saved him, whose name is Mac, seems to be quite a common name for certain shows. But then again, when was the last TV show you've seen that had an officer named Mac? Anyways, he decides to stay in New York with Mac, but in the long end, both of them wind up getting beaten up by some of the other members of the fire department and police and everything, even to the point where Mac is walking out with a hockey stick, attempting to beat them up, but of course, the crap is beaten out of Mac, and along with Ray, who's trying to defend him, which, of course, in the end, winds up bringing them, or at least Ray winds up bringing Mac back to his home in New York, which I think is Staten Island, I don't know, but I need to study the layout of New York more. But yeah, he takes him home, and they both talk about why they are at least together. But they're brought together because of one certain thing. Like, really, one thing. The passing of their relatives. Because as we've seen the last season, Abby has cancer, but she wanted to basically self-kill herself, but Ray refused, but the other family members basically stepped in for that forced suicide. But we could practically say she died of cancer. And alongside Mac's father, whom was building a motorcycle with him, also died of cancer. Which they both just sit there quietly watching the game of the Boston Red Sox while the camera zooms out and we see the literal motorcycle that Mac was talking about that's sitting out there in the front yard. Almost looks like it's gathering moss and all kinds of grass in it. But it's a symbol, it's a real deep symbolic symbol that I see out of it. A purpose that like this motorcycle really meant so much to him. And the symbolism is really something I can understand. Like, something that's very sentimental to somebody. They can hold it on for a long time, and it's really hard to let go. But it's life. And life is a hard decision, or at least a hard game, to say the very least. Moving on. So time flies by, and I don't know if I should call it a day or a week or a month or something, but after Ray basically commits suicide and brings Mac back to his home, and Ray decides to live with him, he essentially winds up receiving a call from Samantha, but denies it, as someone from Tribune Media is trying to get press and information about him and the officer and whatever. But of course, again, denies it, seeing as how Mac is not home and practically doesn't want to deal with Tribune. The card from Tribune is basically dropped inside the house, as Ray doesn't, at least we don't mind what happens to it at first, but Ray winds up basically deciding to possibly helping out with the cause after taking a look at the photos of Mac's family, seeing as how in the past his family served as officers of New York City. And it's a long line of family, but looking at those photos meant something to him, as this winds up causing him to bring it back to this job. Besides, what the hell? I'm coming back to this. So that's pretty much how Ray basically got back into being the fixer that he is. But let's take a break from Ray's information and see what's going on in the other family. So what we can gather from the first episode is that after the troubles that Bunchy went through during the last season, basically he's in trouble with custody over his child, that we've seen last season, and I don't remember what her name is, but definitely he's separated from his young daughter, as basically he's only allowed to see her once a week, which really scars him, seeing as how this is like the love of his life, something that meant so much to him. But the same could be said for Officer Mac, whom is also under a divorcee issue, or at least is about to. We don't know much about Mac right now, but what we can gather off-screen and on-screen, basically he has some trouble with his wife and his young child, and they got into an argument between one another previously in a few scenes ago. Probably right around the point where basically they wind up getting beaten up by some of the other members of the authorities. But that's not the only ordeal that we got going on with the Donovan family as well as the Mac family. Another thing is that Mickey winds up hearing information that his screenplay, which is essentially the film that was mentioned last season, I had it in my notes, but it's lost somewhere. But anyways, his script is sent over to the news, which essentially ticks him off as he's trying to think of a way on how to escape from prison. At this point, there's something involving some cigarettes, cigarette stuff and water, and something to do with some sort of, like, toilet pan or something. Like, we don't know this far. But moving on from that, Ray winds up going to Samantha's facility where the studio that's making mixed film, which is also a subsidiary of something called Feature Flicks, that'll go very well next to Film District, where he's assigned to Anita, whom is in trouble with some sort of situation, but is also in a standpoint where she's trying to run for mayor, and he's basically assigned to the job. Not before Ray winds up having Samantha deal with the journalist from earlier on with Tribune. So we'll see what happens from there. So what we'll wind up receiving next is Ray arriving to our mayor character, Novak, whom lies about her situation, but winds up mentioning a guy that took some video of her, and she's trying to find the source of this person. Tries an email, has no luck, but she winds up giving Ray the name, and winds up sending one of his PIs, Lena. Thank God I finally remember the name of these characters now. To the case and figure out what on earth's going on. Back in LA, we wind up seeing Daryl is actually working on mixed film, and that's pretty much what we know so far of the other somewhat of who's in LA right now. But what we've got going on the other side of the coastal regions is that, of course, Terry has moved to a boxing gym in New York because last season he was with Bridget. But also Bridget is living a normal life with her boyfriend that we've seen last season. The one that had that interesting name I had a hard time trying to decipher. Yeah, he's back. And he's in Terry's boxing gym. Well, actually, I don't know who owns that gym now. Because we seen last season that Terry basically shut down the Donovan boxing match arena, whatever, the boxing training area. But let's move on. Ray winds up talking to Mac about the press, as Mac sort of kind of steps in and sends Ray into sending a guy in an auto shop some sort of amount of money for him. But seeing as how the guy doesn't want to deal with Ray, again, much like how Mac was in the very beginning of this, he winds up beating the crap out of him. But anyways, we wind up coming back to Mick as he winds up chugging down the disgusting concoctions that he did with the cigarette and the water for something. I don't know what's going to happen. But we wind up also seeing that Mick winds up fainting in the middle of the night in LA in his prison cell from the nasty stuff that he consumed, while Ray receives word about Novak that has the situation on the video, as he winds up going to the apartment and seeing her, but that's where we see that Novak shot a man. And seriously, that's where the episode entirely ends. But yeah, Season 6's premiere, Staten Island Part 1. How is it? I'd say it's a good start to a TV series of this magnitude. Not much to really yell home about with it. It's a decent premiere, but it's definitely giving you a lot of information. The little promotional ordeal that we'll see what will happen this season, I look forward to seeing how Mick will try to get his revenge on Ray, And definitely a big thing is seeing what will happen to Novak and Officer Mac and Daryl and Bunchy and all these other situations. I just hope that what happens in Season 6, it could be a bit better, and to some would wash out the foul taste of what happened during last season will work. But with that in mind, Staten Island Part 1, what do you think about it, guys? And if you're interested in seeing what else is on this channel, well, just wait until here, if I can remember to edit it, if you want to see more. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week for the next episode of Showtime's hit series, Ray Donovan.